This is Alex. Every day he saves people's lives. What these utensils have to do with it and what exactly his job is? Just have a guess. We are in Austria, in Tyrol to be precise. Like every morning at 5:30, Alex has breakfast together with his family. But just before he goes to work, there is always a little apprehension in the air. If I don't hear anything all day, I get worried. If I hear something on the radio and I can't reach him, then I think to myself, oops, has anything happened? Son Florian thinks his dad's work is cool, but even he has funny feelings in his stomach when he leaves the house. Yes, Dad gets to fly helicopters. It's just that I worry a lot when he's away. Flies helicopters?
I just finished my coffee.
As usual, Alex is the first to leave the house at 5:30. That's the demands of his job. After a short car trip, Alex changes to a snowmobile. Even our man's way to the office reveals a lot. His workplace is located at an altitude of almost 2,800 meters. Alex has a total of 5 colleagues who do the same thing as he does. For the next 10 hours, he has to be completely focused. His colleague Joe is already waiting for him at the top.
Right, let's check last night's weather.
Every working day begins for Alex with a meticulous weather check for his entire area of operation in Tyrol. We wonder whether he's a meteorologist.
No, I'm not a meteorologist. The weather is very important. We follow the weather every day. We also get all the weather reports from all around us.
Alex and Joe spend several hours every week checking the weather. On Alex's desk, we discover the ominous device that is supposed to reveal more about his job. Every day, Alex checks the battery. To us, it looks like a joystick.
We got the device, the battery's good. Yes, we always need the device after snowfall, after wind. We need it a lot, but only for the helicopter.
Alex has been doing this job for 14 years. Every day means the same thing for him and his colleagues. Maximum concentration. We discover a telltale wooden box. Is our man perhaps a doctor?
No, I'm not a doctor, unfortunately. This is our vaccine for hard times.
All right. Once a day, Alex takes the snowmobile to a remote place. For security reasons, we are not allowed to say exactly where it is, because that's where he stores the main ingredient of his job.
Now I'm taking out 2 more such sausages in our camp here. This is a special warehouse with 50 centimetre thick concrete walls, secured all round and sealed off from the outside. And this is where we store our valuable cargo.
And these are sausages?
They look like salamis from their shape, but they're not.
Now Alex prepares the sausages. The tool, this pointed wooden stick. There are also 2 black cables inside. We don't know yet what this is for. Then Joe comes into play again. The 2 of them are a well-rehearsed team.
Alex is a super buddy. They're all super colleagues. We've a super team. We've known each other since primary school. We did our training here together, and we do the job here together.
Another colleague suddenly turns up outside with what appears to be important cargo. We are very curious. Now we understand. The cargo is indeed valuable. A hot pizza for lunch at an altitude of almost 3,000 meters. But the coziness does not last long. A deafening noise interrupts the silence. Suddenly, as if from nowhere, a silver something or other, vaguely reminiscent of a popcorn drum, hovers above our heads. Alex, Joe and their colleague pick it up. What has this got to do with Alex's job?
They're brought here to our main warehouse, then they're filled during the day and flown back to their location in the evening.
Uh-huh. Our guess is that they're snow cannons.
No, they're not snow cannons.
So he's not in charge of beast grooming. Alex is in the final stage of his important mission. So now it's time to start kneading the sausage.
We have 2 half shells here. Now this has to be kneaded a bit so that it becomes nice and soft. Feels a bit like modelling clay. Needs a bit of space so that it fits.
Knead the precious cargo? We are gradually running out of ideas about what this is all about.
So, now it can go in.
Now it gets even more mysterious. The red sausages go into the silver popcorn machine-like drums.
All the technology's inside the drum, including the radio.
A radio in the drum? There's no one sitting inside, is there?
One last check to make sure everything's in properly, and then the lid goes on.
Alex and his colleagues supply the entire area around Ischgl with these sausages. He's about to show us exactly what the ominous delivery is all about. The atmosphere is getting increasingly tense. Alex sets off for the next station. How could it be otherwise? By snowmobile, of course. Another helicopter is waiting. Immediately after our arrival, the whole area is alive with activity. Everyone in the team knows exactly what they have to do. Because from now on, every second counts. The first tourists will be arriving in half an hour. By then, our man and his crew have to be finished with their work. Again, 2 things catch our eye. The red sausages and this ominous device. It seems to be indispensable. But now, all aboard. Helmets and headphones on. Seatbelts fastened and off we go. We're starting to feel a bit queasy. What's going to happen now?
Okay.
The mission has begun. There is no turning back now for Alex and his team.
Visibility's good today. We're just doing a reconnaissance flight to see what it looks like up there.
One thing is clear. Alex and his crew are looking for something. His eyes are fully focused on the slopes below him. As soon as the door is open and the wind gets inside the helicopter, everything has to happen very quickly. Alex pulls the detonator and primes the charge with his special device. Now it's clear what his job is.
I'm with the Avalanche Commission and we're doing avalanche blasting today.
Alex is one of 5 Avalanche Blasters in Ischgl. Every day he puts himself in danger to save lives. But now let's get out of here. Alex has armed the special winter explosive with his detonator. After 130 seconds, the packages, each containing 3.4 kilograms of explosives, detonate. In heavy snowfall, it can happen that Alex uses almost 200 charges of explosives in one day. This year, the level of snowfall is already almost 6 meters, as much as usually falls in an entire winter. Does anything ever go wrong with such masses of snow?
Well, it does happen that an avalanche turns out to be bigger than planned, although it has to be said that such events can never be gauged precisely or planned for. You always have to assume the worst.
To prevent accidents, Alex and his colleagues on the ground cordon off all endangered areas. This is the only way the brave members of the Avalanche Commission can guarantee absolute safety for all skiers and tourists at all times. Our journey takes us to the capital of Colorado. The only ice laboratory in America is located on the grounds of the Federal Police in Denver. We have an appointment with the head of the research laboratory, Geoffrey Hargreaves.
My name is Kai. Hi.
There are only your shoes, which let us think there must be something cold here.
Yes. I have a small freezer. It's about, well, let's see, it's 150 feet long. And the main storage is 30 below zero. Our working room is minus 24 C. It's best
Do you
if
think
we
we have proper clothing?
Oh, absolutely, for about 2 minutes.
Okay, then let's go in, Jeff.
Here, the research team works with ice samples from all over the world. The cores collected provide information about how climate has changed over the centuries and how it might develop in the future. For this to be plausible, Geoffrey's team has to work every day at up to minus 40 degrees.
This room is minus 24 C. If your fingers get cold, or you feel your nose getting cold, watch everybody around you. If you see white spots, tell them so that they can go out and warm up.
White spots?
White spots, you're getting frost nip. Pink is okay, white is bad. It means your flesh is freezing. If we're in long enough, you might get cold stupid. You'll forget why it is you're doing whatever it is you're doing, but that's like the first signs of hypothermia. Over time, your core temperature is going down, and it affects people in different ways. Sometimes you can't remember what you're doing, sometimes you drop things. So just be aware of this.
In order to be able to work at these icy temperatures for a long time, the employees have to cover up every time.
Once you have this on, you can go to minus 40. It's just a time thing. So you can go into minus 40, but you won't be able to stay as long as you can at minus 24.
For 20 years, geologist Geoffrey has worked 8 hours a day in freezing temperatures. Despite his experience and special wardrobe, the researcher has to be careful to not overextend his stay in the cold.
If I stay too long, if I'm not careful, and I stay too long, my fingers hurt. And they'll begin to ache, and I always tell people when they start to hurt, it's time to go out and warm up. And we all do this. It's like, oh, well, I'll just do one more. I'll just do one more piece. And then your fingers are really hurting. And you come out and you put them under the hand warmer, and they hurt worse as they're warming up.
We are now experiencing exactly what it feels like to work at minus 40 degrees. Geoffrey opens the doors to the heart of the ice lab. Over 60,000 feet of pure ice are stored here, compiling thousands of years of geological history. For Geoff and his team, work is something as long as life itself. With help of their samples, researchers can understand the climate history all the way back to the origins of the first human beings to the present day.
We want to know what causes the interglacials to warm up. We want to know what causes the glacials to get cold again. We want to know what gases were in the air when various things were happening. We have to go back into the past to figure out what's normal and how it works. If we can understand how it works, we may be able to figure out how things will respond in the future.
He works with very special samples.
The oldest ice I have is a piece of Vostok. There should be a piece that's 3,600 meters deep, and that's 416,000 years old. That's the oldest ice I have in the freezer. And that came from East Antarctica, from underneath what's called the Vostok drill site.
The researchers cut the tubular ice samples into quarters of equal size and store them in metal tubes. Many of the samples remain in the ice laboratory for analysis, but others go to research centers around the world. Today, Geoff is preparing a sample from Greenland meant to be shipped to Europe.
So this is a piece of Greenland ice sheet core. This piece is about 16,000 years old. It's from 1,841 meters.
The first time you feel really cold hits you around the 10-minute mark. Geoff seems to be able to cope with it very well, so he continues to work relentlessly. Our reporter Joshua, on the other hand, is already struggling with the freezing temperature.
Well, as an editor, you just stand around and look silly anyhow. At least the cameraman's still moving. I just ask dumb questions at this point. It feels coldest on my face, but you feel it everywhere, and my hands are freezing. You just try to focus and ask the right questions, but it's not so easy.
The samples must be stored at exactly 40 degrees below zero. Only at this temperature can the researchers prevent parts of their ice cube from evaporating. For the researchers, the cores are like traveling in time. Thanks to Joff and his team, other research groups also have access to this huge ice collection. Most of the samples come from drilling in Greenland, Antarctica and North America. But how do these ice capes develop? Over thousands of years, new snow masses pressed the old snow onto ice. Ash residues from volcanic eruptions or exhaust gases remain trapped in the different layers of ice. If you examine them, you can even draw conclusions about the first human inhabitants and the extreme changes caused by industrialization. Using special drills, researchers can dig deep into the ice layer and pull ice thousands of years old out from the ground. Joff can use the ice to determine climatic changes occurring during the past centuries and even recognize specific periods within them.
The thicker layers will tell you that there's more precipitation at that time than at another time. There are some layers that are a little thicker and there are some layers that are a little thinner. Now the thicker layer says there was a lot of precipitation, it snowed a lot. And then the thinner layer tells you there wasn't as much moisture, it was not as thin. So it's kind of like tree rings. Sometimes tree rings are pretty thin, that means it was a dry year. Sometimes tree rings are pretty fat, that means it was a wet year. It's the same thing with ice cores.
Joff and his team find no evidence in the cores that the weather has ever been as warm as it is nowadays. After almost 25 minutes in the giant freezer, Joff takes his warm-up break. If the researchers stay in the cold rooms too long, it can be dangerous. In order for the body to cope better with the cold, they have to constantly supply it with energy.
We drink a lot of water and we eat things that are high in calories. Quite often cookies, fruit and nuts. High in calories, trying to keep yourself warm.
Working in these freezing conditions is no easy task for Joffrey and his team. But they are also aware of the impact their research has in acknowledging climate change as a problem.
Worrying? Yeah, I'm worried. It's probably not going to bother me in my lifetime, but we're going to have problems in the future. Some people will ask, well, geez, you know, if it's warming so much, how come it doesn't seem to be doing much? Well, it's because the ocean is sucking up the heat. If you had a very large pot of water and you put it on the stove and you turned on the heat, does it instantly boil? No. Why? Because the water sucks up heat. It's got very high, so the oceans are doing the same thing. You add temperature to the atmosphere, the ocean takes it into itself, so it sucks it up and subducts it and runs it to the bottom of the ocean.
The ice doesn't only allow for measuring precipitation and air particles. Dr. John Fegiversi is interested in the shape of the ice and the ice crystals trapped inside. This can also help to draw conclusions about what affected the environment in the past.
I'm looking at the physical properties, so I'm trying to understand how the ice has deformed and how it's changed. I'm trying to look at the different orientations of the different ice crystals to see if we can figure out the past flow of the ice sheet.
Not only researchers, but also the equipment must be isolated from the cold and adapted to work under heavy cover. One thing working for them is that the cold in the ice laboratory is dry. Otherwise, moisture would destroy the equipment. Researchers at the ice lab want to set an example with their research. Because climate change isn't only noticeable in colder regions or parts of the USA, it's a worldwide phenomenon, and that includes Germany.
We can hopefully shape policy in the future, not just in our country, but worldwide, to address the issue of climate change and hopefully at least mitigate the problems that are going to face us over the next century or so.
With their research, Geoff and his team have been able to prove changes in the climate over thousands of years. They work in the freezing cold every day, handling the history of weather, something extremely important for our future. It's vacation time, but not under the sun. Instead, in mortal danger.
Quick, get in the car, get in the car!
This is tornado tourism. Tour providers promise their clients they'll get as close as possible to these dangerous storms. For $3,000 you can book the tour, but without guarantees a tornado will be seen. And after 2 days of thunderstorms, this is the last chance the tour group has to see one up close.
The weather seems appropriate for it.
It does, hopefully. Hopefully we'll get something when we start going today.
I think it's going to happen. Today is the day. Every parameter, everything you need to make a tornado is here.
The tornado chasers are confident. The weather on the last day of the hunt is wilder than ever. You can see the thunderstorm on the horizon. Hail and heavy rain are pounding on again and again. Tour guide Greg knows exactly where to go.
The best atmospheric conditions for tornadoes right now at this moment anywhere on Earth exist in this triangle right here. The best atmosphere to make tornadoes happen.
And that's where we are right now.
And that's where we are right now. We're right in the middle of that.
The tornado chasers want to get closer to the likely location of the storm's eye. But suddenly, we're no longer alone in the Texas plains. Everywhere we come across more tornado chasers.
I can't decide if we're going. Those ones might get under.
It shouldn't come as a shock. Something seems to be brewing nearby. From now on, extreme caution is required. These storms are unpredictable.
Martin, look at this. Huge hailstones as big as golf balls.
We show a lot of respect for the ice chunks, but Greg isn't impressed.
Isn't that dangerous?
Yeah, of course it's dangerous, but I mean, this size here, this is just a little bit of pain. It's not going to do any damage. I mean, you might have a little headache, but once they get the size of, you know, a grapefruit, then we would be really concerned about our safety. But that's not happening in this storm today.
Things are getting crowded around us. More and more tornado chasers are appearing, and the sky turns dramatically dark above us.
A tornado is on the ground.
Then we receive an official tornado warning from the authorities. A real cause for concern, but at the same time, great news.
I just got a tornado warning on my phone. Everyone should get to safety quickly, but we're doing the opposite.
It's suddenly very quiet in the car. Everybody is fully focused.
Well, there it is, tornado on the ground.
Tornado, tornado, tornado.
Indeed. We've been waiting for this. We see a funnel being created on the horizon, the birth of a tornado. The cyclone is so powerful that it swallows the surrounding storms. The pressure difference between warm and cold air compresses the tornado cloud. The funnel continues to stretch.
There he is. He's on the ground. He's on the ground.
A full-blown tornado tears across the landscape.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, wipers. Oh my God.
Greg wants to get closer.
We're going to be making a right turn. We're going to be heading straight at it.
We race alongside the tornado until Greg decides to stop in a safe place. This is the big moment the people taking the tour have been waiting for, some of them for years.
Beautiful! Look at that!
The tornado races across the land at around 120 miles per hour.
Full funnel all the way down, baby!
Even if it looks close, we're about half a mile away from the eye of the storm. A distance safe enough to take some souvenir photos. For now.
Oh, exhilarated. I look ridiculous. Look at that. This is my first time.
Down again.
Oh my God.
But the storm is unpredictable. The funnel touches the ground again. Now we have to be extra careful. The tornado could change direction at any time. 30 seconds later, and a slight panic breaks out among the tour guides.
We're leaving?
We're gonna move,
Yeah, let's go, let's go, let's go!
Quick, get in the car, get in the car.
The tornado is moving in our direction. We have to go now. But then, it all clears up. It disappears as quickly as it turned up. 3 days of chasing for a tornado that lasted a whole 270 seconds. A great success for Greg.
We've done these tours before where we spend 8-10 days and we don't see any tornadoes. So to have this happen today, pretty exciting.
Well worth it. Absolutely. Yes, it was. Payoff was worth it. It was worth coming down here through the long drives we had for the first few days. It's definitely worth it.
And how's Alan? He had been waiting for this moment for 4 years.
It was super exciting. We made sure all the cameras were rolling, and then we were running in there, passing all these other chasers that were on the sides of the roads. And then as soon as that tree line started disappearing that we had on the side of the road, we could start to see ground circulation, even though the funnel hadn't connected yet. And it looked amazing. And it was like, that is the real thing. That's what we've been waiting for. We've been going after this for years.
The tornado tourists in Texas are more than satisfied. A real tornado formed right in front of their eyes, after 3 days and for $3,000. A nerve-wracking and a quite scary way to spend your time off. But for some people, it just seems to be the right kind of thrill. The hunt begins on the island of Newfoundland in eastern Canada. Preparations are under the command of 59-year-old Ed Keane on this fishing cutter. A tough seal from the old breed that doesn't waver.
Walt, you gotta pass me up the rifle.
Usually, they reserve the shooting only to protect themselves from wild bears. But Ed is chasing something else.
We're harvesting icebergs. Hopefully, the ice gods will give us the piece of ice that we're looking for.
The captain even has his own soundtrack for his search.
Last project for today.
Hippie music and weapons on board, that alone is strange enough. But they're also the world's first iceberg hunters. Ed has been searching for the white giants for 20 years, but only during summer. The rest of the year it's too stormy and cold. But doing it under the sun also has its problems.
The icebergs are fallen leaves. Like when the iceberg is melting, it's going into the salt water, which is really not helping the salt water, and it's going to be gone.
Today, of all days, is the hottest of the year at 30 degrees. Time is running. The crew has a hunting season of only 3 months in total. Ed gets help from the International Ice Patrol in order to increase their chances of success.
They'll give us a report every week how many icebergs there are and where they're to. but most people try to stay away from icebergs, and we're out looking for them.
To date, no ship has been able to survive colliding with an iceberg. But where others change course, Ed keeps heading straight.
There's a fairly big one down off Cape Bonavista. I was down there a few days ago. Here he comes, he's still pretty big yet. Oh, there's a good filming, look.
At first, a white speck on the horizon. But the closer we get, the greater it looks. Around 60 feet wide and at least twice as high. Estimated weight, tens of thousands of tons.
All ice hunters. Yeah, we got a piece of ice in the water there.
Yeah, a piece. It rises 120 feet above the water, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, literally. There's more underwater. But why is Ed so keen on this white giant? The reason is, Ed makes his own bottled water from the icebergs. He also sells the ice products to major beer and vodka producers. He makes over $600,000 from melted ice each year. That's some special ice.
Well, I've been involved with like the fishery, and we had to get ice to ice our fish, iceberg ice, and we got it checked. And all the readings were really low on all the minerals, and actually most of it was 000, which really proved that the iceberg water is a pure form of water.
That's true, and there is a reason for this. Icebergs come from glaciers that formed around 20,000 years ago by frozen precipitation on the Arctic Circle. At that time, there were no man-made chemicals that could pollute. That's why iceberg water is one of the last clean raw materials on Earth. But hunting is not without danger. We only see around 10% of the actual size of the iceberg above water. If it tips over, the enormous lower end would shoot up and destroy the hull. Too big of a risk for Ed.
No, we wouldn't harvest, there's no way, impossible. What we're going to do, we're going to try this chunk over here.
A smaller piece to warm up, so to speak. Crew member Dennis and his 72-year-old colleague Ward take a closer look at it. The two were also fishermen before. It remembers the old saying, the bigger the fish, the better. Only here, it's different.
First thing we got to do, he's a little too big, so we got to make it a little small. Oh boy! Oh man, that's a chunker!
What?
I said he's a fine chunk, that piece! Could you take another? Yeah, I think we're gonna have to take a little more of it.
But not too much. The smaller the piece, the faster it melts and disappears forever.
Oh. No, you got it. Well, that's not what I wanted to do, but that'll work. Whoa.
The chunk isn't as big as the boss would have hoped. Regardless, everything the crew gets should be brought on board. The fresh catch goes straight to the fishing cutter. Ed uses the ship's crane to transport the net and loot on board. From here, it goes directly into a hatch below deck. The several chunks of ice keep each other cool. A freezer of sorts, which also implies that Ed wants a lot of ice.
Okay.
There is definitely still enough to work with. But why do they do this in Newfoundland? Icebergs originate thousands of miles further north, in Greenland. Huge pieces break off from the glaciers. They float down the same route, the so-called Iceberg Alley, until they reach the coast of Newfoundland, a journey that takes up to 5 years. Ed's schedule is tighter. That's why he sends his boys out again.
Be careful over there now, boys.
Dennis and Walt discover a huge ice floe, far too big for the boat. How do they plan in making this work?
That's why I'm circling it. Try to get the waves to see if it can knock a piece off.
They drive in circles for more than 10 minutes. We can hardly imagine that this alone could destroy the massive ice. But when we least expected it, the tactics work. Not surprising considering the 20 years of experience. Dennis and Walt now want to try with a bigger piece. Three tons of ice, twice the weight of the previous one, hanging from an old, used fishing net. Ed is visibly nervous.
Oh, man. Oh, mama. Hey! Oh! Good job! Yeah, well, we're gonna go for another piece. Can we get another piece like that?
Of course. A real iceberg hunter can't get enough. It's no wonder they're up for it. Ed and the crew have to collect the harvest for a whole year in just 3 months. A race against time and when things have to move really fast. Many methods, one result. At the end of the first day, Ed and his crew pulled around 20 tons of ice on board. But what happens to it now? The next morning, Ed leads us to his personal treasure in an old warehouse. It's hard to imagine at first glance. Ed's stored molten iceberg water is worth almost $500,000.
We're going to store these now for later on production. We've got the barge full, approximately 1 million liters.
At the end of the season, however, there should be around 350,000 gallons. So Ed needs a lot more icebergs. That's why he's brave enough to go after the bigger chunks with an even more unusual method.
I guess we'll put a couple bullets in this guy. See how tough he really is.
So that's what the rifle is for. A true hunter.
I'll try you crippling down here on the lower nook there. Whoa! Did you get that?
Get that?
Oh boy. Holy fuck. Oh boy, he's talking back.
Oh, he's ready to come. He's ready to go.
He should be melted square.
Oh, he's coming now.
Oh, he's coming. He's getting ready to go. We got to get out of here. We got to get out of here.
He's going now.
The ice is extremely unstable due to the summer heat. One shot and the mountain might give in.
We got to get out of here. We got to get out of here.
If the iceberg tips, it becomes a life-threatening problem. The crew is looking for open space. It was only 2 hours later that Ed dared to approach the Colossus again. In the meantime, a huge ice floe the size half of a soccer field has broken off. The iceberg still stands to Ed's surprise.
This iceberg is getting ready to die, but still he's a formal piece of ice yet.
Ed wants to take a closer look at how weary his opponent is, and now gets on board himself. He has never seen such a stubborn chunk of ice. We do notice that, despite years of hunting, Ed has never lost one thing: respect.
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Cool.
True, but the lower body threatens to capsize. The movement caused the iceberg to crack so severely that this expedition was life-threatening. And there are no chunks left for Ed here anyway.
We might come back in the boat now and get one of these chunks here.
A kind of ice crumb trail leads Ed to the object of desire, the detached ice floe.
We're gonna get up on that piece of ice, go up for a look.
A walk on an ice floe? It sounds crazy, but it has a reason to it. Ed wants to find out how stable it is and whether he can still collect ice today. The heat could melt it to a point where Ed wouldn't be able to stand on it.
Seriously, how dangerous is it?
Very dangerous. Still pretty cold. Dennis, I think that net is not big enough. Yeah, well, this is a nice piece of ice. It's ideal for grappling with the barge and the grappler because he's stable.
It's expected to be ready by the middle of the season. Ed has to wait for the floe to break on its own. He passes the time with an iceberg water beer.
Skull!
We don't know how long he's stayed for on the ice, but he's most surely been able to conquer this one as well. Ed wants to go hunting for many more years. The hunt for the purest water in the world.
1317, 1318, there's a reported shooting on North Ave. We're going to actually watch them murder a person right here in this alleyway, here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I have a vehicle that circles the block before arriving at the scene of the shooting.
I've got someone getting out of the car, running over to the woods, and then coming back. It's probably where they dropped a gun or something.
Ross McNutt and his team work for the American police force. At their headquarters in Baltimore in the east of the USA, they analyze the photos from the flying surveillance system. The father of four developed this air surveillance system during his military deployment in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, I got him tracked.
His fleet of Cessnas, equipped with high-tech surveillance cameras, take pictures of half the city every second, every day, around the clock. McNutt wants to make America's no-go areas safer using this surveillance system. In his development center, Ross McNutt is currently working on a new camera set for his aircraft.
And each camera will be at a slightly different angle that allows us to take that huge image all at once.
The system hangs on the side of the plane, and this is how it works. The planes circle for 5 hours at an altitude of 3,000 meters. Every second, they take a high-resolution picture of 90 square kilometers at once. They register every movement on the ground. Google Earth Live, so to speak. Theoretically, McNutt can spy on every single person.
Our resolution is just one single pixel for an individual person. So we can't tell anything about who the person is. We can only follow that dot from the crime scene to the car they tend to get into, and follow the car to the house they tend to go to.
Only one pixel for each person. The cameras can't show any details regarding face, clothes, man or woman. The privacy of the individual is therefore not at risk. McNutt's surveillance system costs $2.5 million a year. Cessnas, cameras, analysts. He now sells his system worldwide. Ross was 11 when he first got on a plane with his father. Even now, he still sometimes flies over the most dangerous cities in the USA as an airborne crime scout.
The poorer communities don't get as much policing support as, to be honest with you, the wealthy communities. And the fact that we're focusing on the area where there's the highest crime and the largest need makes us feel, like we're helping. It feels good.
Also on board is a system operator. He makes sure that the cameras are running and that the data reaches the analysts on the ground, which happens within 5 seconds. The police in turn inform the air reconnaissance units of emergency calls. Analyst Mike knows exactly what to look out for.
There's different patterns that we look for. Unusual activity would be cars making U-turns in the middle of the street for no apparent reason, cars stopping in the middle of the street for no apparent reason for long periods of time, foot traffic in the area. If there's a lot of people gathering and moving towards one location, then there's something going on there, obviously.
Mike has been watching a car and is now tracking it.
So this is the second time circling around the block, and right there, he stops. He pulls over for 12 seconds during the same time that the shooting occurs. Okay, that's a good chance that maybe he's our suspect.
Then Mike simply rewinds and tracks the car to its supposed starting point before the crime. Using Google Earth, he can forward the exact address to the police. In the first 2 months that McNutt's surveillance planes were in the air, 17 violent crimes were observed and solved. People of just 1 pixel in size on pictures taken from 3,000 meters above sea level. Ross demonstrates exactly how this helps him solve cases by showing us where his last one started. An armed robbery with a shooting at this store. This is Amanda. She lives next door. She was attacked and robbed 6 times in 2 months.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of people getting robbed. There's the girls out here in the neighborhood are getting raped, and there's just stuff that's not being reported. Yes, I would give up my privacy to make sure that they're the unsolved things, the crimes that are going on in the neighborhood.
It starts here with a shooting. The police are alerted and ask McNutt for help. He finds out that the perpetrator has raided a library just before. By the time the police arrive, the perpetrator has also robbed a discount store. Ross and his team turn back time and follow the perpetrator to where he starts his crime spree. Using the aerial photos, they can determine which car was at all 3 crime scenes.
What we were able to do is follow that same car backwards to a gas station up here where we have him actually putting gas in his car. So with all that information, with the description of the car, the description of the person in the area that he started and finished, we were able to solve this crime quite quickly.
The gas station's surveillance cameras even filmed the man's face. The police now have the license plate of the car and the suspect's picture. During only 1 mission, McNutt's pilots receive about 100 emergency calls. In the most dangerous cities in the USA, a murder happens almost every day, including tonight. We're watching the news in our hotel room. There's been a shooting at the edge of town. McNutt wants to take a closer look at the crime scene on the ground.
You can see the car, they've already taken down the crime tape. This is probably where it happened. Yeah, you can see the door there.
About 15 shots were fired. While we're recording, one of the neighbors suddenly appears and tells us what happened last night.
Well, I heard fire coming and then return fire. And I came around the corner and the body was laying over on the ground. They said they was playing cards or something in there, and from what I heard, guys pulled up, tried to go in and rob them or something.
Although this neighborhood doesn't feel safe, he still finds McNutt's camera planes above his head disturbing.
It's still invading privacy. Some of it might not be the crime they think it is. You know, things is different.
Essentially, there was one person killed, one person struggling for their life, 2 other people shot.
Jesus Christ. My daughter, she's a single parent, and she has 2 boys, and she stays right here. I don't have anything to hide, you know. Whatever I do is wide open. So you can watch me, pull me over or whatever, and I'm clean as a whistle. Now, if you got something to hide, then you probably would feel invaded, you know, if you're doing something wrong. And so whoever did this could be caught if they were being watched from the air.
McNutt would like to deploy his aerial surveillance in many more cities, but often fails due to opposition from the public. Internationally, however, his system is arousing interest. European countries in particular want McNutt's surveillance from the air.
A number of the countries that are on the eastern side, southeastern side, are very interested in detecting and seeing where people are coming across the borders. I can't say specifically which countries, but there's a number of them that are interested, and we're working with a couple of European partners that hopefully bring the capability to Europe.
Well, I think I want to cut.
McNutt has experience with this. He's been monitoring the American-Mexican border for 9 months. For this, he uses this infrared camera. This way, he can catch drug smugglers and, of course, report illegal immigrants.
There's something going on there.
Yeah.
He gets out of the car, runs around, jumps back in. I wonder what that means. So you can tell a difference between a refugee or an immigrant group and a drug group. The drug groups actually walk in a tighter formation. They walk faster. The immigrant groups are usually larger and more spread out. So it's, you know, after a while you get to recognize what the different patterns of the groups are.
For 4 months, Ross flew over the US-Mexican border. He sees 34 murders and can spot a secret tunnel system. This is what McNutt's border surveillance could look like in Europe too. Perhaps his camera planes will soon be circling above our heads.